Have you ever watched someone let go of a dream, not because they wanted to, but because they were convinced it wasn't meant for them? I have. And today I want to tell you a story, not just any story, but one that could be yours or someone you may know. This is the story of Marcus and Tasha, a couple who almost walked away from the idea of home ownership because after so many rejections and setbacks, they believed the dream just wasn't for them. But what happened next? It changed everything. Not just for them, but for their kids and their kids' future. Marcus and Tasha, two hardworking parents of three that lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment. Rent went up every year, but their space didn't. They were good people. The kind of people who helped neighbors with groceries, showed up to parent-teacher conference meetings, and worked overtime when needed. Every financial move they made was careful and deliberate. They paid bills on time, lived within their means, and saved whatever they could. But still, every time they reached out to a lender, the answer felt like a slap in the face. Your credit score isn't quite there. It's not the right time in the market. You'll probably have to wait until next year. Are a few of the things that they heard year over year. It was always the same. No one ever offered a solution, only shutdowns. I remember Marcus saying on the phone one evening, maybe, Corey, this just isn't for people like us. Maybe we are meant to rent forever. That line, it hit me really hard because they are not alone. Recent studies have shown that nearly 70% of renters believe they'll never own a home. But here's what that number doesn't tell you. Many of them absolutely could qualify. They just don't know where to start. They have been told no so many times, they have stopped asking questions. They stopped believing. That night, I sat down with their file in front of me and something just clicked. What if it wasn't them holding things back? What if it was the lack of access to guidance? So the next day I called and I said, what if the problem isn't that you're not ready? What if no one's shown you the right path yet? That's when things started to change. We created a custom action plan, nothing overwhelming, just small, consistent steps. We connected with a credit specialist to clean up a few old marks, nothing major, just things they didn't know were hurting their score. We applied for a first-time homebuyer assistance program they never heard of, and turns out they qualified for thousands in down payment help. And we brought in a lender who was experienced with non-traditional income. Marcus drove for Uber on the side, and Tasha did freelance design work. Other lenders had dismissed them. This one didn't. Suddenly, the fog lifted. They saw a timeline and direction. They had hope. They weren't just dreaming anymore. They had a strategy. And it didn't require perfection. It required information. 6 months later, I met them at the closing table. It was quiet in the room, nervous energy. Tasha's hand trembled as she reached for the pen. Marcus looked at me across the table and whispered, no one in my family has ever owned a home. Not my parents, not my grandparents, until today. That moment, I'll never forget it because it wasn't about the square footage or the number of bathrooms. It was about the legacy. It was about reclaiming something that they felt out of reach for generations. That little house had a backyard where their kids could play without worrying about parking lots or strangers. A neighborhood where they felt safe. And most importantly, a sense of ownership that no lease could ever give them. This wasn't just real estate. It was a reset button for their family's entire story. And that day reminded me of a few things. Most importantly, it reminded me why I do this. Because behind every deal, every signature, every house key is a person just trying to believe again. We talk a lot in this business about inventory, about rates, about over asking price. But let's not forget, we're in this business of belief. I've worked with single parents, empty nesters, couples with student loan debt, veterans with unique needs, and they all said the same thing at some point. I didn't think it was possible. Until it was. The truth is, you don't need perfect credit. You don't need a huge down payment. You don't need to know everything. You just need someone to help you figure out your first steps. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, Corey, that's beautiful, but I don't think I could do that. Let me say this directly to you. Yes, you can. You may not know the path, but just know the path exists. There are programs, people, strategies. You just need someone to walk you through it. If you ever felt like Marcus and Tasha, please don't give up. Because here's the truth no one talks about. You don't have to do this alone. You don't have to be rich. And you don't have to wait for the perfect market. You just need to get in the room with someone who sees what's possible for you, even when you can't see it. And for those of you who are watching, who can help, agents, lenders, advisors, brokers, don't forget your power. Your knowledge might be the key that unlocks someone else's future. So here's my challenge to you all today. If you're a hopeful buyer, start somewhere. Reach out. Ask questions. Look into assistance programs. Talk to someone who believes in solutions. If you're in a position to help, don't hold back. Be the person who makes it easier, not harder, for someone to believe in themselves. Because behind every set of keys is a new beginning. And you could be the reason someone finally walks through that door. Thank you for watching. And if you're ready to take that first step, just know I'm here.